Ah, there it is. The Geometry Wars game that was released to the Nintendo crowd so they could finally see what they were missing out on. It's also a game that I didn't know existed, despite being a big fan of this series. I also find it odd that this game came out before Geometry Wars 2, since it introduces many traits from that second game. Or I guess now would be the third game. But at the same time, this entire game is structured in a way that honestly reminds me of the third game, like almost being a prototype to it. But before I continue, I really should just quickly explain what Geometry Wars is, since it isn't as prevalent as it was back in the day, and the fact that this version comes with the original game prepackaged in. Now, as you can see, Geometry Wars is a throwback to old arcadey twin-stick shooters, but also as an evolution as there are more enemies able to appear on the screen, leading to more intense firefights. And of course, the goal is to get as high a score as you can, and this is done by getting many extra lives, using the screen-clearing bombs smartly, and just playing a really great balancing act between the many different types of enemies that you go up against. But that is just the core gameplay. How does Galaxies shake it all up? Well, it does so by adding a sort of mission mode. And the game does this by having a selection of galaxies that you must go into, then select, well, a mission. And the missions are you going into a differently shaped board every time, and just trying to get to whatever score you need to get either bronze, silver, or gold, like either 10 million or in some cases 100 million. And in these missions, you never know what you're gonna get. Either you're gonna get the normal thing of you trying to fight them off, normal amount of lives, normal amount of bombs, or whatever else, or you might have only one life and a non-stop spawning of one particular type of enemy, or you might have to destroy bigger pieces of enemies that then spawn in a bunch of enemies when the last of their bits are destroyed, or even a constant black hole that keeps spinning you around that you just have to fight against. But yeah, that's basically it. You go into levels with their own mini like hazards or whatever, and go up against returning enemies as well as some new ones. But luckily, one of the new things in this game is that you're not going in alone. You get a buddy ship that is called a drone, and you have the ability to choose what it does for you to aid you out, whether it's an extra turret to help you out or a collector that makes your score multiplier go up. And speaking of the score multiplier, I should probably knock this out real quick. In the original game, the way it went up was by killing a certain amount of enemies. It would go up like 1, then 2, then 3, and whatever. But in this game, it introduces a new feature of how to get it up. That being these tiny little green floating things that come out of enemies when you kill them, called geomes. And every time you collect one, it makes the multiplier go up and everything that you kill worth more points. They are also used as upgrade points to upgrade your satellites to perform better. They are also used as a currency to buy more drones, unlock more galaxies, as well as the levels, as they are also scored from the medals, like you get a certain amount for reaching a certain medal. But because of this change, it also makes the game more dangerous, because just like in the first one, if you die, you end up going all the way back to 1 multiplier. And, well, I mean, this is more dangerous because instead of just hitting the enemies, you actually have to go out into the field to collect them. Now, would I say this is a good change? I guess. It allows you to get higher scores. And with that out of the way, there is only one new thing really to talk about, and that is the multiplayer. Now, I will admit that I'm saying this without even touching it, because I'm pretty sure all it is you going head-to-head against a friend to get the highest score, or maybe even working together with him. But, I mean, it's basically the main game, but with a second player, so overall, pretty cool. But, yeah, that's everything I really need to say about this game, like, new-wise. It's basically a compilation of new game modes that you unlock slowly and then play, plus the added bonus of playing the original version. So overall, this is technically better than the base game because of all the added in stuff that it has. But of course, that doesn't mean it's 100% perfect, So now moving on to the negatives of it. And well, honestly, I can really only think of two negatives off the top of my head. The first of which is that I said already that in this game they introduced the geomes, but when they introduced it, it also came with a limit. Yes, when you get to 150 geomes, that's where it stops. And well, that makes the scores that you could possibly get not go as high as you really want them to. Especially during levels that, like, you need to get 100 million to get gold in. And honestly, because of that, it turns into you just playing the play into, like, you needing to go for a full-blown endurance test to get the gold. That, and I feel like it makes the collecting satellite completely worthless, because you're gonna get to 150, then there's literally no reason to use it again. But this one I can at least understand, because if you didn't have a limit and you just kept going up, then these missions would be way too easy. It's a good thing that they got rid of this limiting inhibitor in the later games. So I guess they learned their lesson. Now moving on to the second negative, which I believe is much more severe, that being the game's controls. Now, why is that? As I said, this is a twin-stick shooter, so what's the issue? Well, the issue comes in three ways. The first of which is that according to the back of the box, you can only play the game with either a nunchuck or the classic controller, so the GameCube controller is just completely out, which really sucks because I really do think that the GameCube controller would have worked really well with this game. And honestly, this is the only reason I bought the game, was because I thought it worked with it. Well, that's what I get for not looking at the back of the box. But at the same time, I kinda feel like I was still right, because how else are you supposed to play this game? You can't play it with a Wiimote, can you? Well, like I said before, it's playable with the Nunchuck edition, and basically how this works is you move with the Nunchuck and then you aim your shooting direction with the actual Wiimote, like you actually point at it with the sensor bar. Now I will definitely admit this is a creative way to get around the not having twin sticks available in this controller setup, but I can't say that I find this as something as long-lasting as you really want it to be. I mean, with how many enemies you have to deal with and how you have to deal with them, I just don't see your, like, ability to move your hand as quickly as you would your thumbs to be, like, as preferable. I don't know, maybe if you played with it enough and got more used to it, maybe, but I don't think it would be. This leads us to the third controller option, which is the classic controller, which, fun fact, this is actually the game that made me buy one. I had never owned or played with one before this. So with this type of controller, we finally have the solution to our problems. You see two sticks and there you go. So then why is this part in the negatives? Well, here's kind of the reason. Well, to be quite frank, I don't like the classic controller. I think the thing sucks. Now, I do acknowledge that this is all my personal opinion, but still. I don't like the fact that you have to plug it into the Wiimote for it to work instead of it being wireless itself. Meaning that you have to basically sit completely still, more or less, so you don't accidentally, like, move it and then the Wiimote drops and disconnects. I don't like the wire coming out of the bottom instead of the top like normal controllers have it. It's just wrong and annoying to deal with. And I would say that my biggest gripe with this thing, especially for this game, is that the two control sticks are way too close to each other, and so my thumbs almost end up bumping into each other. Combine that with the fact that the control sticks themselves are way too slippery, so my thumbs just keep slipping off of them, which is the last thing that you would want in an intense game like this. Now again, I do acknowledge that this is from my point of view, which, for context, I have been playing with Xbox controllers basically all my life, so I'm so hardwired into them. And as you can see on all of them, the control sticks are so much farther away from each other, and I'm just so much more used to that. It feels much better for me. So it might be okay for someone else, but for me, I just don't like this thing. And unfortunately, that's kind of my conclusion with this game. If it had come out on a different system like the 360, I probably would have liked it better. But wait a minute, it did come out somewhere else. It came out on the DS. Yeah, this game came out on the DS, and it's basically just a port of it. Like, there's nothing removed to my knowledge. It's just basically the same game but portable. Except for the controls, obviously, where you would use the D-pad to move and the buttons to shoot, or even use the touchscreen to move and shoot. And well, I prefer playing that version over the Wii version, even though playing on my DS with this game in particular physically hurts to play after a while, because of how hard and often I'm pressing all the buttons. So yeah, I guess this review has a sort of happy ending for me. And despite this title having more content than the original game, it's unfortunate that the controller options have hindered its enjoyment factor. One cool thing that this game had was the availability of connecting the DS game to the Wii game, and then you would unlock a extra universe with levels in them in both versions of the game. Now, I don't own very many Wii games, but is there another one where something like this happens? Because this is a really cool feature that I hope wasn't underutilized.